by r/adultery. I never thought I would be writing something like this, and I definitely never thought my life would turn into something that feels like a chaotic experiment in relationships, honesty, and emotional damage control. I confessed to cheating and somehow ended up in a kind of open marriage. That sentence sounds simple, but what actually happened was messy, painful, confusing, and honestly still not fully resolved. Let me start properly because the ending only makes sense if you understand how far things had already drifted. I am 28F and my husband is 30M. We have been married for 6 years. We have multiple kids together. From the outside, we look stable. Not perfect, but stable enough. People would probably describe us as a young couple who got married early, had kids, and are just doing life. But the truth is that for a long time, I felt like I was slowly disappearing inside my own life. It did not happen all at once. It was gradual. After the kids, after routines took over, after responsibilities started stacking, I stopped feeling like a full person in my own identity. I was a wife. I was a mother. I was constantly needed. But I was not really being seen. And I did not know how to say that without sounding ungrateful or selfish. So instead of talking, I started escaping in small ways. At first it was harmless attention online. Conversations that felt exciting. People who asked me questions that were not about chores, school fees, or diapers. People who made me feel interesting again. Then those conversations became deeper, more personal, more emotional. I told myself nothing physical was happening, so it was not real cheating. I told myself I was just venting. I told myself I deserved something that felt alive. But I also knew I was crossing lines. This went on for about 2 years. Not one continuous affair, but a cycle. I would get close to someone online, emotionally attached, sometimes even fantasizing about meeting them. Then guilt would hit me. I would cut it off. I would promise myself I was done. And then a few weeks or months later, I would feel that same emptiness again and start over. It was exhausting. It was like I was living 2 lives and neither one felt fully honest. My marriage itself was not violent or abusive or anything dramatic like that. It was more like emotional distance had settled between us over time. We functioned well as parents, but we were not really connecting as partners anymore. Conversations were about logistics. Intimacy felt rare and mechanical. We were roommates raising children more than lovers building a life together. I did not know how to fix it, and I definitely did not know how to admit I was part of the problem. I think part of me also resented myself for how much I had changed. Before marriage, before kids, I used to feel curious about life, about myself, about relationships. I was more expressive, more open, more in touch with desire and identity. After years of responsibility, I felt like that version of me had been buried under duty, and I did something I was ashamed of even while I was doing it. I tried to resurrect that feeling through other people instead of addressing it in my marriage. Then everything collapsed. A few weeks ago, my husband saw a message on my phone. I do not even think it was the worst message I had ever sent, but it was enough. Enough context, enough tone, enough emotional implication that he immediately knew something was off. I remember the exact feeling in my stomach when I saw his face change. Not anger at first, confusion, then realization. Then this quiet stillness that was somehow worse than yelling would have been. He asked me directly if I was cheating, and I could have lied. I could have minimized it. I could have tried to control the story, but I did not. I just said yes. And once I said it, everything else came out like a dam breaking. I told him about the emotional relationships, the online connections, the pattern, the shame, the way I kept returning to it even when I knew it was wrong. I did not even try to soften it because I was tired of living in half-truths. The atmosphere in the room shifted completely. It was like the air got heavier. He did not scream. He did not throw anything. He just sat there processing it. And that silence felt louder than anything else. Eventually, we started talking about what happens next. At first, it was practical. Too practical. Like our brains were trying to protect us from the emotional reality by focusing on logistics. We talked about separation, about who would move where, about the children, about custody arrangements, about finances. I I remember feeling strangely detached while saying things like, I would move back with my parents temporarily and he would handle child support and alimony. It felt like I was watching my own life from a distance. At one point, I started packing a bag without really thinking about it. Not dramatically, just folding clothes, putting essentials together. Like my body had already accepted that this was the end of the marriage. But emotionally, neither of us fully let go. There was still something unresolved between us. Not just anger, but confusion about how we got here without noticing the exact moment things broke. Later that night, when everything had quieted down, he asked me a question that changed everything. He said, what would it take for us to stay together? I remember staring at him because I genuinely expected the conversation to be about ending things, not saving them. I told him the truth. Not a strategic answer. Not a careful one. Just the raw truth. I told him I did not want to leave. I did not want to destroy our family. I did not want our kids to grow up splitting time between two homes if there was any way to avoid it. But I also told him something else. I told him I had been unhappy in ways I did not fully know how to explain before. I told him I felt sexually frustrated. I told him I felt like I had lost parts of myself in this marriage that I did not know how to recover inside the current structure of our relationship. And then something even more vulnerable came out. I told him I had always had curiosity about women, that I had never explored it, that I had been carrying that curiosity and shame for years, that I did not know what it meant exactly, but I knew it was real. Saying it out loud made me feel exposed in a way I cannot describe. I was crying while I said it because I felt ridiculous and selfish and confused all at once. I expected him to shut down, or to feel disgusted, or to say this was just proof that the marriage was over. Instead, he went quiet again. But this silence felt different, more thoughtful. Then he asked me something very direct. He said, "So if you had the freedom to explore that, you would stay?" And I did not even have a clever answer. I just said yes. Not because it solved everything, but because I did not want to leave my family. What happened next still feels surreal to me. Instead of rejecting it, he started asking questions. Real questions. Not accusations, not sarcasm. Questions like he was trying to understand whether this was something that could be structured rather than something that only ends in destruction. At some point, he said something that I still replay in my head. He said, "So you are telling me you want to stay, and part of what is missing for you is sexual and emotional exploration, especially with women, and if I was part of that conversation in a safe way, that would help." It was not exactly a perfect phrasing. Nothing about that night was perfect. But that was the direction his mind went. I did not know how to respond because I was not prepared for negotiation. I was prepared for consequences. We talked for hours, literally hours. Not calm hours, emotional hours. Confusing hours. We would circle around the same ideas repeatedly. Break down, pause, start again. At one point, he admitted something too. He said he had also felt disconnected for a long time, but did not know how to express it without feeling like he was failing as a husband. That was the moment I realized this was not just about my cheating. It was about a long-term breakdown on both sides that neither of us had fully named. Eventually, the conversation shifted into something neither of us had ever planned for. We started discussing whether staying together required redefining the structure of our relationship instead of ending it. It felt insane while it was happening. We talked about boundaries. We talked about honesty. We talked about what would feel safe versus what would feel destructive. We talked about what would happen if jealousy came up. We talked about what the kids would see or not see. There was no guidebook for any of it. And yet, by the end of that night, we were not separated. We were not divorced. We were something else entirely uncertain. The rough idea we landed on, still very tentative, was that I would be able to explore relationships with women, but only in a transparent way. No secrecy. No hidden emotional affairs like before. Everything would be out in the open. He also expressed curiosity about being included only if the other person was fully comfortable, but that was not a requirement. It was more like an option we might explore, not a rule. I made it very clear I did not want anything unethical or pressuring toward other women. I did not want anyone feeling like an object in our marriage process. That mattered to me. And then we stopped. Because at some point we both realized we were making life-changing decisions while emotionally exhausted. Nothing physical has happened since then. No dating, no partners, no real steps yet. Just conversations and boundaries and uncertainty. And now I am sitting in this strange in-between space where I went from expecting divorce to negotiating something I do not even have a name for.